Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Q2 Reset. I am so glad that you are here. I just want to say the fact that you're here, I know there'll be some of you who are watching this on replay, so I'm saying hi to you as well, and kudos to you for taking the time to watch a replay, because we all know how replays go. Usually they get buried in our inboxes, right? But those of you on live, or those of you who are watching the replay, the fact that you're here tells me that you are committed to your business and to seeing it grow in Q2. Okay, so as people are coming in, I want to start off with a quick win. So if you are on live, you can put this in the chat. If you're watching via replay, you can just hit reply to the email that you're getting this in or wherever you're finding this and share it with me. I want to know one win from Q1. Okay, I think so easy. So it's so easy to see the things that didn't happen, the ways in which maybe we missed the mark, we missed the goal, we didn't do the things we said we were going to do. But I guarantee there was something good, right? So as we're coming in and as you're getting settled and as you're grabbing your workbook, and I will drop that link in here again, it's redeemhertime.com/Q2-workbook. Q2-workbook. I would love to hear in the chat, what is a win that you had in Q1? Now, if it was related to a goal that you set for Q1, amazing. You can go ahead and tell us what that goal was, but no win is too small to share. Because it's the accumulation of all those wins over time that actually is what leads to our growth. I think sometimes we think it's the huge jumps and leaps, right? And really it's just the small, consistent effort over time that gets us to those places. So as we're doing that, as we're bringing some people in, just a reminder, we're here to focus, which means we need to turn off distractions. In fact, before you go today, we're going to identify not only your number one focus for Q2, we're also going to identify your 3 top distractors, right? So right now, let's practice, okay? Because we all know there are digital distractions that are coming at us all the time. So if you can, close your tabs. I actually do have a program where I teach you what to do so you don't have all those tabs open. Silence your phone, or at least maybe turn it over so you can't see stuff that's popping on there. Turn your camera on if you can, because I love seeing your face. Don't worry if you're not camera ready or whatever. Like, we're here, we're friends, right? Get your workbook ready. Let me go ahead and drop that link again. You figured out what you're going to do. Yay. That's amazing, Militia. Militia has had the kind of a refocused structure of what she's doing, which I love. That's a huge win. So thanks for sharing that. As you're coming in, we're sharing one win from Q1. Okay? Something happens. You are here, right? Maybe it was something that was actually a tangible result. Maybe it was something that was more focus, belief, mindset result. But go ahead and drop that in the chat. And then make sure that you grab your workbook while you are in there as well, if you don't already have that in front of you. So, all right, I just want to let you guys know, if you don't feel like you had any huge wins for Q1, or like, yeah, there wasn't as much as I would like it to be. Q1 didn't quite produce the results I was praying for. Hey, Alyssa, I felt like I was spinning my wheels. I want you to know you're in the right room. And today we're going to shift that. Okay? So I want to take a quick poll, especially for those of you who are on live. And if you're watching the replay, answer these questions yourself as well. Okay, so question number 1. Let me see if let me just copy this so you guys can see it. Sometimes it's easier to see it than just hear it. Question number 1 is, which statement best describes your Q1? You're going to tell me A, B, or C. A, I worked hard, but I didn't see the results I was praying for. B, I made some progress, but I felt a little scattered and maybe stretched thin. Or C, girl, I stayed focused and I multiplied what I had with numbers to prove it. How are you coming out of Q1? No shame in any of them, because I guarantee there are people in the room who are in all 3 places. If you're in A, we're going to get you moving towards B and C. If you were a C girl, we're going to keep that momentum going and see how we can grow that. So we got some B's and A-B-ish. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this part so I can see all of you guys. Okay, all right. So again, we're on the board, right? A lot of A's and B's. Okay. Question for you, number 2, is this. Which resource felt like it was underused this quarter? I'm going to give you 3 options to choose from. Oops, I got to hit the right return button so you guys can see it, not just me. There we go. Was it your time? Was it your focus? Maybe you put in time, but you were a little squirrely. Or was it the opportunities that God had laid in front of you? If you had to pick one of those resources that felt like it was underused this quarter, which would you pick? Time, focus, or opportunities? Where might things have been underused this quarter? And guess what? You have all 3. Okay, so I want to encourage you with the fact that you have all 3, right? And we want to always be looking and taking a quick inventory of these three around, okay, how am I being intentional with this thing that God has entrusted to me, whether it's time or focus. I see a couple of focus, maybe opportunities he put in front of you. Sometimes those are timely, and so if we don't take advantage of those, we miss them. All right, last question while we're still bringing a few people in, and that is, what do you want most for Q2? Okay, do you want clarity? You actually want to know what is going to help me move the needle, get the ball down the field over the next few months? Do you want confidence that I know what my next steps are and I know what my timeline is? Even though I can't control it all, I at least have a timeline that I know if I follow this, right, I'm moving in the right direction and I'm moving towards that result that I want. Or do you want consistency? Yeah, consistency that says I am going to execute consistently and produce the multiplied results. All right, clarity and consistency, confidence and consistency, they all go together, right? Right? And so we're going to actually walk away today working on all three of them. And we're going to be talking about what you can do to make sure that you stick with that clarity and get even more clarity, that you continue to step out in confidence and that you have that consistency over time. So, all right, I just want you guys to know, I get it. I was the girl who was what I call a busyness owner, right? Like I loved God. I knew that I wanted to serve in my business. I was working long hours. I was showing up for everything, but I wasn't going anywhere. Right? I did a lot, but it was like that hamster wheel, right? Not really going anywhere, but I was spending so much time trying to make it do something. And here's what I learned. So I want you to hear this. It wasn't a time problem. You guys know, if you've been in my world, one of my signature phrases is, you have time, okay? It actually, what I discovered was a focus problem. I was focusing on checking my boxes instead of actually measuring my progress, my income, and my impact, right? And now I teach this strategy called ROTI, R-O-T-I, which stands for Return on Time Invested. We'll talk a little bit more about that today and why that's something that we want to be looking at as we look back at Q1 and then as we look ahead at Q2. So in our time together today, by faith, right? Because we're not doing this by ourselves, we're doing it with the Lord, and with strategy, because he's given us some things that we are to use and we want to be strategic with it. Here's what I want you walking away with today. I want you walking away identifying your Q2 growth project. We're going to identify maybe some gaps that you might be seeing right now in your business and thinking about how can I focus on one growth project that is going to fill the gap in this area. Okay. What is it that's most likely to increase this, my reach, my revenue, my consistency, some things that we just talked about. We're going to be pinpointing your top 3 distractions, right? The shiny objects, the setbacks that quietly steal our focus, our time, and our results. And you're going to be ready to step into Q2 with clarity, with confidence, right? And with an opportunity to be consistent because you are a CEO that is redeeming your time. So if that's what you're looking for, then I'm glad you're here. And I just want to remind you that everything we do here is always grounded in truth and in what the Lord tells us. And in fact, Redeem Her Time was literally born in the pew when we were studying the book of Ephesians. And I was thinking about this conversation I just had with a friend of mine on the way into church that day when I asked her, hey, how was your week been? And guess what her answer was? Busy. And she just had that like plastered smile and that knowing look in her eyes like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And that morning we were in Ephesians and all of a sudden I turned right to Ephesians 5:15-16. And that was where Redeem Her Time was born. So it says, look carefully how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time or making the best use of it because these are difficult days, right? Amen to a lot of things pulling on you, plus an enemy who would love to distract us from doing what we've been called to do, right? That's why we have to have attention. We have to have intention and we have to have dedication. So what I want to do before we go any further is stop and pray and commit this time to the Lord so that we can focus on what we're going to be doing today. So Lord, we thank you for this time. I thank you for bringing each woman to this live or to this replay. I pray that you will give her the ability to focus, the ability to stop, to put down her to-do list, to put down her distractions, and all the things that are weighing on her heart and mind right now, and just to focus in on what you want to say to her about growing this thing that you've entrusted to her. I thank you for the privilege of being in a relationship with you and for being given a business or a ministry or a calling in the season of life that we're in that that we are to invest our time in, to invest our energy in, to invest our focus in, so that we can produce results that bring you glory. And so God, I just ask that you'll give us wisdom today. Help us to see what we need to see and hear what we need to hear, and then do what we need to do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. So I'm glad you guys are here. Some of you came in a little bit after we started. So if you haven't already, let me drop the, I got to go back and grab the workbook link again because I was dropping other stuff in there. So let me do that real quick. And we'll drop that in there. If you don't have the workbook in front of you, it's not the end of the world. But if you like kind of knowing where we're going, then go ahead and grab that. And if you haven't already, I'd love to hear one win that you had in Q1. Doesn't matter how big it was. Doesn't matter how small it felt. What is something that you saw growth in, particularly if it's related to your business, but it may have been in another area that was really, really important. And while you're doing that, here's my next question for you guys. What is one result that you are committed to in Q2? What is one result that you are committed to in Q2? I want you to drop that in the chat because I'd love to see it, but then I want you to write it right at the top of your workbook because I want this staying in front of you because this is why we're doing the thing that we're doing today. Okay? And I want you to know before we even dive into what we're doing today, this is step one. Okay? We're going to be identifying, like I said, your one growth project. We're going to be looking at your top distractions. But I know there are going to be several of you who are like, okay, Lissa, easy to do when I'm on Zoom and I've turned everything else off. But as soon as you get off of here, what's going to happen? Life is going to happen, right? And so if you don't just want to say you want to do something today, you actually want to do it and have support week by week over the next 90 days so that that result is inevitable, then I'm going to be inviting you guys today to join me inside CEO Focus. And I've got a little juicy something for you. If you are here live and if you're watching the replay, check the email that I send with this because I'm going to tell you how this works for you. But if you are here on live and you join us inside CEO Focus, you are going to lock in a special Q2 reset rate. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this link in the chat so that way you guys can have that. You will have to use that code in order to get this. You're going to lock in $82 a month for as long as you stay in our coaching accountability program. Plus, I'm going to be throwing in my Ideal Week mini course for free so I can help you start saying, hey, what does my plan actually look like for the week? And how do I not have to feel like I'm crash landing into Monday, making it till Friday and hoping that something of importance got done in between? Instead, we're going to make sure that everything that matters has a place. So that's going to be like an extra bonus. You won't see any information about that on the website because that is for you guys only. When you're on here live, all you need to do is use that code to check out, and then I will make sure that we get you access on the back end. So I know I told you to close your tabs, but you can multitask because I want you guys to make sure that you've got the support to carry this out before we get off today. Okay? All right. So we're going to step into part one, which is we're going to do some reflection and some honest evaluation, right? Contrary to what you may think, what others might be doing right now, or maybe what you've done before, we're not just going to plow into a new quarter next week, hoping that things look different. That's actually why I planned this now when we still have a week left, because it gives us some time to do some reflection and also to do that planning in the moving forward. Okay, but before we look forward, we are going to look back. Okay, so take out your workbook, and there are 3 questions that we're going to take a few minutes in real time. And yes, you can come back to this. I encourage you, if you don't already have a rhythm of a daily CEO meeting with God, then make sure that you start doing that. Even just 15 minutes before you actually jump into your work will make a big difference when you're sitting down with the Lord. Right? You're reminded of what you're called to. You're reminded of what's true, what he's given you, and you're asking for that wisdom as you are implementing and taking action with what it is that you have. So, okay, question number 1, what goals did you set for 2026? I want you to think back to that January 1st excitement, right? Like everybody kind of starts the year with like, this is what I'm going to do this year, right? So just in case those got a little bit dusty already or cobwebs or they got buried somewhere, I want you to jot down, what did you say that you wanted at the start of 2026? What were the goals that you were praying for? Maybe what were the things that God was stirring in your heart? Okay, I want you to write those things down. And then the second question there is going to be, were they measurable and specific? Because oftentimes we either don't have something that we're working towards, or if we do, it's not measurable. It's really vague. It doesn't have a clear, how do I know if I've even gotten here type of thing. And then we just have these general hopes, not knowing for sure. So I want you to think back about that because this is actually going to help us as we move into Q2. What was my goal? What did I say I wanted to have happen in this next quarter and leading into 2026? And was it clear? Was it measurable? Was it specific? Okay, so I'll give you just a minute to kind of jot down what comes to mind. My goal is to keep us around an hour and maybe a few minutes over, depending on, kind of where we end up at the end. So I want to make sure that I give you time to think about things, but also I'm going to encourage you to come back to some of these questions again as well. Yay, journal launch. Yes, love that. That's going to be bringing impact and income growth. Okay, Lorian's working on income. Yes, I love that. Good, good. Okay, so I want you right now thinking back to January 1st. To have at least one client that you've been able to help. I love that because you're just starting out new. So that'll be so exciting to get somebody that you are like, I'm actually helping somebody. Love that. It's such a good growth learning process too. Okay, if you did not have any goals that you had set for Q1, that's okay, right? But then I want you to know probably why you are in the place that you are right now, which is where we're going to be going to next. Question number 2, what actually happened in relation to that goal in Q1? Right? Were there results you actually saw? If so, can you be specific about those numbers? The number of clients, the amount of revenue, the number of subscribers, the number of products that were sold. It's going to depend on what it was you were working on as to what metric you'd be measuring. But what results did you see? And what the second part of that is, what results did you not see? What hopes weren't quite met? Maybe because you didn't know how, or maybe just because you weren't actually following a really clear, consistent path in order to get there. And again, right now, I just want to say, like, this is not about shaming. We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is just us getting curious. Yes, I'll drop the link to the workbook again. This is just about us getting curious because this is how we learn before we move forward. Otherwise, we're going to keep making the same mistakes. Okay? So no shame, no stories, no judgment. What did you say you wanted at the start of 2026, start of Q1? What actually happened? What were the results you saw in that area? Or in that project, or in that goal? What were the things that didn't happen? And then the last question is, when do we really get curious? Okay, and again, I want this to come from a place of curiosity and seeking to understand, not condemning. Here I did it again, right? Why were these my results? Or why did I not see results? Okay, I want you getting curious about why did this happen or not happen? And very often, if you're in my world, time is this underlying thing that connects to everything. So I want you thinking about, where did my time actually go? Because if you're like most people, especially, think about the gyms, January 1st, right? January 2nd, January 3rd, maybe even all the way through the month of January, the parking lot is full. And then what happens if you show up to the gym in February? You can get the front row spot, right? Because everybody else already bailed. In fact, did you know by the second Friday in January, I think it's like 76% of people have already given up on those New Year's goals or resolutions. Now, if we are in business, we know that we need to keep those things in front of us and keep us moving forward. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of time and money. We've got an expensive hobby. That is not what we're here for, right? But I just want you getting curious about, where did my time actually go? Not where did I intend for it to go, but where did it actually go? Because here's the truth. Your calendar tells the truth. Just writing down the goal doesn't, right? Okay, so again, I just want you to notice, why did something happen or not happen in this area? Or if you are like, so Alicia, I know you're starting with something brand new. So maybe kind of thinking about another area of your life, or maybe in the past, like what has led to things actually like happening, a goal that you've set or something that you've worked towards or not. Okay. Sometimes it's because we're trying to do too many things at once. Sometimes it's because we didn't really have a clear plan with specific timelines. Sometimes we just didn't have the consistency, right? So what was it for you that either led to or led to not that goal happening? Go ahead and drop the workbook one more time since we've got so many people joining us, okay? Again, you may think of more things after the fact, but I want you really taking some time before Q2 starts next week to really look back at Q1, to get curious, to get specific, to get like, okay, what actually was happening or not happening? Because usually it's actually really good news. Do you know why? Because where you are right now is the consequence, good or bad, of how you've chosen to invest time up till now. Okay? Which means, why is that good news, Lissa, if I'm looking at a fact that a goal that I set, January 1st, and here we are at the end of March, hasn't happened yet? Because that means if we want to change things in Q2, right, one of the areas we need to look at, the first area we need to look at is our time, right? Yes, you have influence over your time. I love that, right? We do have influence over our time. Time is this, I call it our most valuable growth asset. If we are not investing time in something, it is not going to grow. Nothing happens by chance, right? We all know that. And yet sometimes that's how we treat things, and we get really disappointed when something doesn't happen, when we didn't really give it that focused time and attention and consistency that some of you mentioned, right? So this is not a shaming thing. This is not a less than thing. This is us just going, okay, what's actually true? Because over time, effort without that consistency is not going to produce the results. It's just going to produce you being busy and not really going anywhere, like I shared with my story earlier, right? One of my favorite parables in scripture is Matthew 25. In fact, I'm actually listening to an audiobook right now all about the parables that Jesus told. And my favorite one is Matthew 25, the parable of the talents. I actually think it should be called the parable of the servants. It's really about them, not the talents they had in their hand. But here's what I noticed when I was actually reading it the other day in my time with the Lord. There was a master who entrusted resources to each of his servants according to their ability. Right? So he didn't give somebody more than they could handle or more than he thought that, he gave to them, including the guy that got 1 talent that we always feel bad for. That was 20 years' wages. So take what you earned in 2025 times 20. Like somebody gave you a check for that amount today, you'd be feeling pretty good, right? Okay. But that wasn't really the point. But what stood out to me the other day was it said, after a long time, he came back to settle accounts. What happens over time? Usually over time, we get distracted, we get discouraged, or we get off in the ditch, right? How many of you, right? Again, January 1st, I set this goal, and already over just 3 months, we've gotten distracted, discouraged, or off in the ditch. And so what I thought was so interesting is that the guys, the servants, I'm assuming they're men, I think they are, the men that actually brought a multiplied return back to the master that heard, well done, good and faithful servants, they didn't get distracted. They maybe had felt discouraged along the way or a little bit or whatever, and they didn't forget that they had been given something with the goal of growing it on behalf of the master, right? And so what would that look like if you were showing up to Q2 saying, I want to be focusing with intention with not only the time that God has given me, but also whatever this business is that's in front of me, because I know that this is from him and this is what's making an impact for him, right? Now, that one guy who got the 1 talent, who didn't act in that way, who just went and buried it, right? He had a very different response from the master. But here's what I want to say to you. Again, it wasn't that he brought back, just the 1. It was that he didn't actually focus on what the master had asked him to do with it, which was to grow it. So this is not about shame if Q1 didn't turn out the way it could have or it should have. I bet even those servants that got 2 and 5 talents probably lost a little bit along the way. They probably got distracted once in a while or discouraged or off in the ditch. But guess what? They came back to remembering, what am I doing with what I've been given? And how do I be intentional with that? That is wise stewardship. And that's God's invitation for us as well. So let's look at where we might have fallen into some busyness owner pitfalls, okay, or busyness owner mistakes. I want you to see, these are on the next second page of your workbook. Which of these mistakes might have applied to you in Q1? Okay? All right. Mistake number 1 is you were trying to do too many things at once. How many of you had a laundry list, right? January 1st, like, I'm doing this and this and this and this, and then you jump in all of them, and nothing gets your time and attention enough to move the needle. You were chasing squirrels and shiny objects, or you were trying to just, kind of have your hand in too many pots. Okay? If that applied to you, go ahead and check that off there, because that's, again, going to give us information about how we're going to change things for Q2. Or maybe you fell into mistake number 2, that you didn't have a clear plan with a timeline. Maybe you did just have one thing or a lot of things, but it was more in the I'll get to that tomorrow category, or what I call the one day, someday plan. Anyone else on that plan? Right? Not actually in like a clear plan that says, hey, if I am doing this, trying to get to this place by this date and then this is going to move me down to this outcome that I'm looking for. There's no sense of urgency. Now, I'm not talking like stress, where now we're feeling that we're always behind the 8 ball. but just something that's helping us to keep going. Here's the thing, and I teach this all the time. I'm like, there's a difference between setting a goal and giving yourself all year, right? It will take you all year, or setting a goal and giving yourself 12 weeks, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay. But either way, if you don't have a timeline at all, you're for sure not probably going to get there anytime soon. Okay. So if mistake number 2 relates to you for Q1, just mark it off. Again, we're just collecting information. And then mistake number 3 is that you didn't have weekly check-ins. You didn't have time set aside for you to actually look at, what am I doing or not doing? Is this actually moving the needle or not? How can I make some strategic decisions, some adjustments? Maybe I need to adapt things because, let's be honest, it looks pretty on paper, right? And then life happens or another opportunity comes in and sometimes things get shuffled around. So if you're not consistently checking in with those goals, not only the goals, but the plan and the progress, you're probably not going to reach it, right? Which is why you might be sitting here at this place. I want you to think about a road trip, because I know all of you have been on road trips before, right? You can drive all day, but if you don't have a defined destination, you're not going to get anywhere. If you don't have a timeline of when you're going to get to that defined destination, you're probably not going to get on the road, right? Or you're going to be turning off at all the little road stops. And if you don't actually have somebody in the passenger seat to remind you of where you're going and why, you're probably not going to get anywhere. You're just going to waste a lot of time and money and stress and energy, right? Same thing in business. So right now I want you kind of looking there, which of those mistakes contributed to your Q1 results? Was it number 1? I was trying to do too many things? Was it number 2? That I didn't have a clear plan with a timeline on it? Or was it number 3? That I didn't have a way, in a consistent way, that I was consistently checking in with my progress and what I need to do? Yes, or all 3. That was my last option that I was going to tell you, okay? And it's okay because we're going to fix all 3 of them. I'm going to show you what we'll do that here in just a minute, okay? Okay, but I want you kind of noticing, because this information, here's what busyness owners do. They don't take the time to do what we're doing today, and they just run right into the next quarter, and then they wonder why the next quarter turns out the same, okay? So we are doing things differently, in that we are actually going to make sure that we're looking to go, hey, that didn't work when I was trying to chase 2 squirrels or 22 squirrels or 202 squirrels. I'm going to focus on 1. Or that didn't work when I didn't have a clear plan or roadmap. And that's why, let me just go ahead and drop this on here again for you guys. That's why what I'm inviting you to inside CEO Focus is built around what I'm going to be walking you through today, the growth mapping method key 3, which is going to solve all 3 of these mistakes. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you made 1, 2, or all 3, we have a fix for all of them and a way to keep you focused and consistent in investing time towards what it is you want to grow. And like I said, if you join us while we're on live today, or replay peeps, make sure you watch you look at the email that's around this to see what this looks like for you. Then you lock in a special Q2 reset pricing for as long as you stick around. Okay, so that's actually $82 a month instead of $97 a month. And I'm going to throw in a free little mini course so that not only do you have a plan for your goal, but you actually have time to execute your plan because you're going to have this template for when you plan your week. Okay, so I dropped that link in there. Make sure you use code Q2 reset in order to get those things attached to it or whatever. So as we're looking at this, here's what I want to say to you, and then we're moving on. Okay, we're going to start looking ahead. If Q1 didn't go as you hoped or prayed, it wasn't because you didn't have faith. It wasn't because you weren't capable, but it was probably because you were looking in the wrong direction, right? You weren't focused. You weren't consistent. You didn't really even have a plan for where you were going. And so, of course, we don't end up where we want to be. So let's now turn the page and work on turning our scattered effort into multiplied focus. Okay? I'll grab my drink here. All right, we want to look at what is the difference between that scattered effort and that multiplied focus, okay? Scattered effort looks like a little bit here, a little bit there, constantly shifting directions. Anyone feel like that? Like I'm kind of going in this way and then I'm going this way and then I feel, like, yes, we don't get anywhere. But when we have multiplied focus, right, it looks like an investment over and over and over in the same direction, right, until it produces results. And what I love is that consistency multiplies, right, the outcome. There's something called the compound effect. If you haven't read that book, it's a really, really good book, a very simple concept that as we continue to do small things in the same direction, it compounds over time, okay? And that's what we want to do because this is going to be the difference between just containing our time and actually expanding it for increase. Okay, but before we get into that, that question at the top says, Lord, what one area do you want me to steward this quarter? Stewardship is all about expansion, right? So those servants that were given the talents, they were supposed to take what they've been given and grow it. That's why the one guy who went and buried it was told you could have at least put it in the bank and earned interest, right? To grow this so that the kingdom would grow, right? That is what stewards do. We're always looking for how we can grow what we've been given. So right now, what is one area of your business that you feel called to be on the expansion plan rather than containment plan? We'll talk about what that means here in just a second. What's one area that you feel called to steward in your business? It could be your leads. It could be your current members or clients or customers. It could be past people who've worked with you. Those are great. Again, a lot of times they like coming back or referring people your way. Maybe it's stewarding your team. Maybe you have interns. Maybe you have a VA or some other, contracted people that you're hiring. And so you really want to steward that area. Maybe it's some connections and opportunities that you have. What is one area of your business that you're like, you know what? We're going to be talking about this here in a minute. I've been more containing in this area than expanding in this area. And then I want you to think about, what difference would that make? What difference would expansion or growth in that area make as you're stepping into Q2? Okay, because we're always going to be thinking from that stewardship place of, this has been entrusted to me, not to hang on to, not to white knuckle and keep from getting away, but like, how can I invest this in ways that it's going to expand? Okay, so let's look at what is the difference between containment and expansion. This is one of the little tweaks that I made before we got on. So if you downloaded the workbook before we started, it might say containment versus stewardship. But stewardship really is about expansion. And so I want to talk about the difference between containment and expansion, because we want to have this mindset as we're stepping into the practical part of what we're doing today. Okay? So I want you to think about your business in Q1. Did it feel like you were constantly trying to keep things from falling apart? Who here is like, I was reacting, I was responding, I was putting out fires, I was trying to keep up? That's what I call containment mode, right? Where most of your time is working in your business, not on your business. Do you know the difference? In your business is I'm just trying to keep the wheels on. On your business is I'm doing strategic things to like move this thing forward. Okay? Containment says, let me just get through today. I just need to keep up with everything coming at me. Okay? Now let's contrast that with stewardship, which is about expansion. Stewardship says, I've been entrusted with something and I'm intentionally going to invest it with an expectation of growth and increase, right? That is the working on our business. And guess what? That time never just shows up at the end of the day when you get to the end of your list. This is time we have to make time for before we sometimes get into our to-do list. Otherwise, we're not going to see that we're actually moving in a specific direction. So which of those two, let me go ahead and drop the workbook for you, Carrie. Glad you're joining us. I'll drop that in there so you've got that. There we go. Which of those do you feel like has been more what Q1 has looked like for you? Containment or expansion? And then I want you thinking about, how can I start pivoting towards expansion, aka stewardship? Let me give you a couple examples. Okay, maybe from filling your calendar to protecting your CEO time, right? Instead of letting your day get filled with meetings and errands and interruption, blocking that focus time for the growth project we're about to identify, and then treating it like this is non-negotiable, like this is an appointment, right? Because here's what I told you earlier. You're not going to just find the time. You have to make the time based on what matters. It's going to grow you. Or what about this one? How many of you are consumers of content? You're listening to podcasts and trainings. You're getting all these ideas, but you're not executing. You've taken lots of notes. You've got notebooks full of notebooks, but you're not actually doing things, right? Here is where expansion would be choosing one strategy and implementing it consistently over a period of time. Like a quarter is a great period of time to focus. So because information doesn't multiply your results, implementation does. Or maybe you're the girl who's been doing everything, right? A little email, a little social, a little back end, all this scattered effort that we talked about. And so you're like, you know what? If I want to be doing the right thing, right? The one thing. Yes, sorry, I will drop that again for you, Carrie. See if that comes through there for you. One thing that's actually going to be tied to your growth project. Okay? Because remember, the scattered effort is going to keep us in that containment mode. But when we have the focused action, that's what's going to lead to the expansion and the multiplication mode. Okay? So I just want you starting to think about containment versus expansion, because this is how we're going to step into Q2 a little bit different. Amanda, you have something you want to share?
Yeah, more of a question, just feedback or insight. Lisa, I'm sure you can relate to this because I know you are familiar with Kelly Roach. One thing that I know intellectually would be useful is being more consistent with my miracle hour. It's like
Mm.
outreach, touch point, like relationship building, sales, I do it, I would say to a marginal extent, and that was one of my initiatives for first quarter. That's where I talked about the consistency as a challenge. Is I gotta be honest, like that's the thing that every single day is on my calendar for an hour, and it's the first thing that I vulnerably and honestly just like let fall off because I think part of it is I just it feels like a lot of output with not necessarily
Mm.
like engagement or feedback. So I think my question for you is just like when you think about like your one focus, would you say it's just to implement that system more effectively? Or I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is like logically, I know what would probably be helpful to do more of, but that's not necessarily helping me to execute more consistently, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. No, that's a great thing. And I love the fact that you've noticed like this is something I know that is going to help me grow, that I know that needs consistency, and it doesn't always give me immediate feedback. But
Yep.
over time, it does produce things, right? So that could be what you decide is your growth project for this quarter is that you're like, okay, I'm going to refine that process. I'm going to make sure because it may be a scheduling issue that where you put it in your day, it's a lot easier to kick out and let something else fill. It could be that it's a systems issue where it's like, it just feels really clunky. I've got things in too many different places. I don't have a really great system for how I'm doing it. So we kind of avoid things that feel hard. Or it could be like, yeah, I'm just coming in and I'm really just executing and checking boxes, but I'm not really strategically thinking and showing up in a way like a CEO that really believes like I am making a difference. And I'm familiar because I'm in one of her programs too. So, making connections with people and following up on the things that they share with us and things like that. So I love that, and so again, that could be what you're like. This is what I'm committed to in Q2 because I want to be consistent, and I would encourage you, especially because it's something that you've been inconsistent with. Look at what your results are when you're inconsistent, and then commit to being consistent with it, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever you decide. And then, see what kind of results you get when you're consistent with it. And that may give some motivation to, okay, this is something I'm going to make time for and not push off the calendar because it actually produces results. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, you just said something that's really helpful. Maybe it would be, I tend to be somebody who's kind of like all or nothing. Not, that's at my like, but when you even just said commit to it 4 days a week, right now it's on my calendar for 5 days a week. But maybe even if I just refine that and said, let me just commit for 4 days a week, it still it feels like there's a little bit of like a day off where it's like I don't
Yeah,
have to think about that, but it feels a
sure.
little bit more spacious. And yet it's taking it up a notch from what has been previously.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I have the freedom that if there is a day that I just push comes to shove and this is the thing that has to go, it's like I don't feel like, oh, there I am again, right? But it's okay.
Yeah.
I always tell people if there's something you want to do daily, and daily in my world doesn't always mean 7 days a week. Like if it's a business thing, it's probably 4 to 5 days a week based on your work schedule. If you miss it one day or you push it off your calendar, like, okay, give yourself grace. Just don't let it be 2 days in a row. Once it's become
Yeah.
2 days in a row, guess what happens? You're now creating a pattern going in the
Better.
opposite direction of where you want to go, and then it's going to take more effort to turn the bus around. But it's still,
Yeah.
you can turn around after 2 days or 3 days, but then when it's 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, then yeah. So yeah, I love that, Michelle. I was just thinking about that too. Maybe you go down to 3, and I'm going to be super consistent with 3 and show myself that I can do this, and then you can always bump it up to 4 and bump it up to 5 if you want to do that. So yeah, I love that. And
Thank
here's the
you.
difference. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah, or reduce it to less time. So maybe it's like, okay, I'm going to give this a half an hour instead of an hour. So
Yeah.
kind of looking at what is the tendency that makes me feel like I can just push this thing further off. And I think part of it too is going to be coming back to the value of what it is that you're doing. Because once we know the value of something, even if it isn't in the short term, like I feel it right away, we will show up to those things. We'll make time for those things, right, as we go. Which is why, you guys, this is the difference between a business owner and a CEO. A business owner is just over here checking boxes. They're feeling good because they're checking boxes, right? But then they look up and they're like, "Oh, wait, there's no people coming in. There's no more people on my email list. There's no income coming in my bank account, which then obviously is going to affect us. But a CEO is always going to measure their time by what it produces. What is the return on time invested? And I'm not always looking for an immediate return because a lot of times we know in business it comes over time. right? And so we have to be faithful and consistent in that thing in order to do that. Okay, so right now, this would actually be a really good thing to think about, okay? Right now, I want you guys thinking about something that you spent a lot of time on in Q1. Maybe it was, maybe you're like writing a whole bunch of emails, or maybe you were, cleaning up your back end, or maybe you were, like we always have to look and go, okay, if I spent a lot of time on this thing, what kind of results did it produce? Did it grow my audience? Did it generate leads? Did it help people come into whatever I'm offering? Or did it just keep me busy? And guess what? Permission, if it's not producing results, to be like, this is not going to be a focus in this next quarter. I think for a lot of us, it can be some things with social media that we feel like we have to be in all the places all of the time, and we're not seeing results. What would it look like if that wasn't quite so much? So, okay, so be paying attention when you're doing things over time. Is this producing results or is it not? Okay, instead of trying to fix everything, I want to walk you guys through the growth mapping method key 3. So you can see exactly what these look like. In fact, you know what? I've got a slide that I had pulled up. Let me share this, because this way you can see it a little bit bigger for you. Okay. All right. So we talked about those 3 mistakes. We talked about how do we make sure that we're focusing our time on what's actually going to move the needle. Okay. The first thing we need is a one thing focus. What is the goal or project that is going to move the needle? Not the 10 things I could do. One strategic focus for this quarter. Okay, you may have a lot of different things that I'd like to do this and this and this. Okay, but let's pick one thing, because again, we don't want to be chasing too many things and getting nowhere. Okay, so that's key number 1, the one thing focus. Key number 2 is having a very clear growth map, right? That's what we talked about, having this map that tells us exactly where I'm going, right? So that I know I'm getting there. Back to that road trip, right? If I live in the St. Louis area and I want to go to Miami, right? I'm probably going to say, okay, I'm going to go from here to Nashville, and then from Nashville to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Miami, and I can map it out, right? I don't have to get overwhelmed about every turn from the beginning, but I'm going to have a really clear plan in which to follow. And then the last key is that we're going to need some kind of weekly accountability. I call it WHAM, weekly accountability meeting. Number 1, you need one with yourself, because as a CEO, you need to be checking in. But very often, we need to have other people speaking into that as well, because we sometimes, left to ourselves, we let ourselves off the hook. We quietly quit. We don't even start, right? We're cutting corners. We're not really paying attention or being accountable to where our time is going and where it's not. Okay, so here's what I want to tell you. When you're thinking about expansion in Q2, it will not happen by accident. It will happen when you have a one thing focus, when you have a very clear growth map, and when you have a plan for weekly accountability. Okay, and what I want you to hear is that this is not just a strategy shift. This is a stewardship decision, right? Like where we're taking what it is that God has put in our hands and saying, okay, how do you want me to invest this in this next season? Okay, so let's go ahead and start going, okay, so what would this even look like if I were to start thinking about what I want to focus on in Q2? Okay, so you can turn the page to where it says part 3, identify your Q2 growth project. Okay, no more being scattered. We're going to be focused. No more just trying to be contained. We're going to be focusing on expanding. And now we need to answer the most important question, which is, don't worry, you don't have to have the 100%, I know for sure rock solid right now, but what am I going to focus on for the next 90 days? When Q2 starts next week, I want you to go into that knowing this is a growth project or a goal that I am working towards. And then ideally, you're already going to have a plan mapped out so that you just execute week by week with weekly accountability. Okay? But what we choose right here is what's going to determine whether Q2 looks different than Q1 or just more of the same. Okay? And a growth project is a strategic focus. It's the thing that's most likely to increase your reach or your revenue, or both of them. It's not always the easiest thing. It's not always the most exciting thing. And that's why I love that you shared that example, Amanda. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. It's the thing we want to avoid, but it's the thing most likely to produce results. Okay? So we're going to take a couple of steps to identify what might that be. Okay? The first one is I want you actually looking at, back at Q1, where did you actually see results? Or maybe not in Q1, maybe it was in 2025. Like, where did you actually see things moving forward? I've got a couple examples here. Maybe you had a high converting product, and so okay, I want to focus something around that. Maybe it was things that you're doing, with your clients and the way that you want to focus your attention on them to be able to retain them, get more referrals. Maybe it was ads that were producing revenue. Maybe you had an email list or collaborations. I want you to think about what has fruit look like in the past? things that have actually moved your business forward. Okay, it may be some examples, consistency in one of the platforms that you're on that's actually leading to conversations. Or maybe you've done a training or a workshop that brought in new people and helped more people come into the program or the offer that you have. Or maybe you started or want to start a referral program that's helping to turn things into a sale, right? So it's going to be a little bit different, but I want you kind of not going, I have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe it's something that you already have, or you've already done, or you already know to do that's going to need that focus. And it might be small right now. That's okay, right? Because like we said, small things compound over time. So don't dismiss what has worked in the past just because it felt simple. I think the tendency for us as business owners is shiny objects. How many of you have shiny objects in your inbox or in your news feeds like every single day? Oh, maybe that's going to be what it is. Maybe that's going to be what it is, right? Yeah, so many, right? What if we just actually look and go, what do I already have in my hand? What is it that's already right in front of me? So I'm going to give you a minute here to just jot down what are some things that have actually produced fruit in the past. What are some things that you already know to do that you wouldn't have to be reinventing the wheel or completely starting from scratch? Some things, obviously, we're doing for the first time, we would have to do that. But is there something that's already kind of in your hands that could be what multiplies in Q2? And as you're looking kind of back at what things maybe you have in your hands, what things you've done in the past, look for patterns, right? What was it that when you were consistently doing it was actually getting people to respond or sign on the dotted line, whatever the thing is that you're wanting to bring them to, right? What happened when you followed through or when you focused on one thing, when you were serving instead of overthinking, right? Oftentimes those results leave clues as to where we need to be focused. Okay, so I want you kind of thinking about what are some things that have brought results in the past. Okay, the next thing we're going to step into is, okay, where might there be some gaps right now in my business? And I'm going to walk you through 3 types of gaps because I think most gaps fall into one of these 3 areas. And I want to make sure your growth project solves a real gap, not just some random idea. Okay, so let me walk you through these 3 gaps so that you can start thinking about which of these gaps would I want to make sure that my growth project is focused on. All right, gap number 1 is the reach gap. Maybe you have a visibility problem. You're just simply not getting in front of enough people. Right? Maybe you've got low views or low engagement. You don't have enough new leads coming in. You're very inconsistent in when you're showing up places. Maybe you have a really great product or offer or service, but not enough people are seeing it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how big do you think your gap is when it comes to your reach, when it comes to your visibility, when it comes to the right people finding you? Go ahead and jot that down. Well, let's say the scale of 1 to 10, 1 would be I have I'm really low in this area and I want to grow. We'll say that 10 is, this area feels like it's really rocking and rolling. Okay, so when it comes to your reach, your visibility, how would you rate yourself on that? Gap number 2 is your conversion gap. Maybe people are seeing you, they are finding you, they are liking you, but they're not actually saying, yes, I would like your product or your program or your service. They're not buying. Maybe you're getting engagement, but not sales. Maybe you're getting conversations, but not conversions. Maybe, you're sharing offers, but they're not saying yes. Maybe, you're busy, but it's not actually turning into income. Do you have a conversion gap right now? And they all build, obviously, right? Because you can have, if we don't have the visibility, then the revenue is going to be suffering, right, as well. But thinking about where might my gap be right now that I want to focus on for Q2. The third gap is your consistency gap. Okay, I know some of you already shared this, right? It was maybe more of an execution problem. You know what to do, but you're not doing it consistently. You're starting and stopping. I call it the start, stop, sprint cycle, right? How often do we do that? Or we just get easily distracted and we lose focus. Or we start really strong, but then we just don't have the follow through. Like you have a plan, but maybe you don't have a rhythm to execute. So I would love for you in this area under identifying the gaps to say, okay, which gap is costing me the most right now? Is it my visibility? Is it my conversion? Or is it my consistency? And I would love to hear in the chat, if you're willing to share, which of those 3 do you feel like you've got the biggest gap in right now? where you might want to put some intentional focus when we come into Q2? Consistency. Okay. Then reach. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it's being consistent with what I already have and the current leads I already have. We did a whole workshop series back in the fall about you don't need new leads. Most people are just not being consistent and following up with the ones that they already have. And so bringing in more people is only going to, compound the problem and add more people there. Okay. So we got a lot of consistency and reach here. Okay. So let's talk about what could be something that could help you focus in that area over Q2. Okay, this is the main thing that I want you walking away from today. Going, okay, what could my growth project be? So let me give you some ideas. If your gap is that visibility and that reach area, not enough people seeing you, then maybe you're wanting to grow your audience with consistent value-driven content on whatever platform it is. Not 10 platforms, but pick one platform that you want to really focus on in Q2. Doesn't mean you can't show up in those other places where you already were if they're producing results, but where am I going to put some focus here? Maybe you're going to add in some weekly live trainings or collaborations that you want to do. Maybe you're going to start more conversations to build new relationships and awareness. I want you to think about if visibility was kind of one of your big gaps, how can I get in front of more of the right people consistently, right? Consistency is going to tie into all of these. If you're in gap number 2, that conversion that people are watching, but they're not buying, right? Maybe there's going to be a little bit around that core offer that you have that is being refined and then clearly communicating that. Maybe you're going to do a workshop or a training that's going to help bring people in so they're really going to understand and experience what it is that you're doing. Maybe you're going to improve your follow-up with people who've raised their hand in some way and have said, I'm interested, tell me more, but then you just kind of lost touch with them. We want to turn that attention into them taking action if this is the right thing for them. Of course, we never want somebody to take action if this is not the right thing for them, right? And if your gap is the consistency one, you know what to do, but you're not doing it. Maybe here, right, it's okay, how am I going to make sure that I am planning out my week each week so that thing actually isn't just on a to-do list somewhere or scrolling around the back of my head, but it actually has a place in my week where it's going to live? How can I establish a simple rhythm that I can stick to? Yeah, go ahead, Amanda. Thanks for being here. How can I follow through on the things that I'm saying I want to do? So this one is really about doing the right things long enough to see results. Consistency, right, will do so much more than a whole bunch of scattered effort. Okay, so right now, we're not making detailed plans. We are just getting a clear direction. We're not figuring out the how right now, because that's what I'm going to help you do with step 2. We're choosing the right focus. So right now, based on what you've seen as looking back on Q1, which gap is most obvious for you that you want to focus on in Q2? And let's pick one growth project, one growth goal, one growth, thing that we want to work towards that is going to make a difference in that area. Because if we don't actually identify what that, at least some general sense of the direction that we're going, again, everything, we're just going to keep throwing spaghetti at the wall, or every shiny thing that comes in our inbox, we're going to think, oh, wow, this would be great. So this would be a really good time for you to drop that in the chat. My Q2 growth project is, or the gap area that I want to focus on is, what would that be? Drop that in the chat. Would love to see what's coming up for you. And I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview of a couple of things in here that will help you with the next step, and then let you know how I can help you a little bit more with that too. But I would love to hear, where are you wanting to focus as you're stepping into Q2? Which is the biggest gap for you, and what would be something that would help start filling that specific type of gap? And maybe you're sitting here right now and you're like, Lissa, I have no idea. I've got 100 things in front of me that I could do. Or maybe you're like, Lissa, I got nothing. Sometimes it's like we have so many ideas, we don't know where to start. And sometimes we're like, I got nothing. Okay, that's why we don't do this alone. That's why I'm inviting you guys into CEO Focus. Let me see if I can find the link wherever I put it in here last. So that way, here it is. So that way you've got a system and support where I actually walk you through exactly how to do that. Let me just drop that in there. Okay, I love it. Consistency with the Hello to Let's Go Power Hour. Yeah, right? That's something that I teach inside of one of my bigger programs is how do you track your leads? How do you follow up with them? And that consistency around it. Good. My Q2 project is building my new website. Okay, I love it. And my growth one is scheduling my webinar series 1 and 2 over the next 3 months to grow my funnel. Perfect. Good. I love it. Okay. So we're getting some direction. That's what I want you thinking is like, I'm not just going to go into the next quarter hoping I have my to-do list is going to get me there. This is where we have some strategic focus around what is going to actually help me move the ball down the field instead of me kicking the can down the road, right? Okay. So when you have some idea, yeah, oh, I love that. Consistently focusing on one platform. Okay. Think about that. How often are we inconsistent on 10 different platforms or even 3, right? And we wonder why it doesn't work. Just start with one, right? And be like, what would happen if I actually showed up? And then, Alicia, what you're going to want to do is think about what does consistency mean? Because like we talked about earlier in that last example, sorry, my ringer was not off. It doesn't mean you have to be on there 7 days a week. It may be I can be consistent with 3 days a week, and then I can always up it from there. So I love that. Consistency in all your offers live. Okay, so that may be a little bit of back end stuff to get those offers ready. And then, okay, how am I actually making these public? How am I letting people know? And then what am I doing to connect with people who are already in my world? Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts that we need to figure out, but we can't do all that figuring it out. And we don't want to start making to-do lists until we actually know what's the gap I'm filling and what's the direction that I think I want to focus in. Okay, that's what I want you getting kind of, at least if it's not crystal clear, you at least know, here's the gap and here's the direction I think that I want to be moving. And it's okay if you don't know all that yet. Okay, right underneath this, I'm going to encourage you to do this in your CEO time with the Lord tomorrow morning or later today if you are going to spend some time. What could this look like if you actually did this over the next 90 days? What could this look like? What is the outcome? If you can put a number around it, I think it makes it so much easier to know if we're actually making progress. To just say, I want to get more followers, or I want to build my email list, or I want to have more clients, or I want to, serve more people, like doesn't really get us anywhere. It's really hard to, make a plan for something that's super, super vague. So what would that look like? And then I want you dreaming a little bit. 90 days from now, if you actually did that. So say, for example, you're like, okay, I want to bring in over the next 3 months, I want to bring in 5 new clients to whatever the offer is that you're focusing on. Okay. If and when you brought in those 5 people, what does your business look like? How would that affect things? Not only just on paper, right, and in your bank account, but also just even in your confidence and your mindset and the way that you're helping people and the impact that you're making. So I always say, if we can get ourselves into what it's going to be like on the other side, that's going to make it a little bit easier to do the what is maybe required in between that is sometimes easy for us to kind of shy away from, right? So get yourself in kind of that future thing. If I actually did focus on this thing and I gave this consistent time, what kind of outcome would I like to get to? We don't know for sure. You could blow that thing out of the water. You could have said 5 clients and you maybe bring in 15. Okay. But when we put a number on it, at least it gives us something to shoot for. Okay. So that may be a little bit of homework that you're going to do. The next step, and again, I'm just going to kind of like walk through this real high level for you, because those of you who come into CEO Focus, we're going to actually do this together in the next week. So you're going to have a very specific plan before Q2 starts. But think about, okay, if this is where I want to be at the end of 90 days, how can I break this down into 3 measurable milestones? It could be month 1, month 2, month 3. So Q2 spans April, May, June. Now do you see why we need a plan? We all know what happens in May and June, right? April, you may be good. May and June are probably going to be a lot of things happening in your personal life. And that just, how do we navigate that as business owners? By doing exactly this. We've got our one thing focus. We've got a 12-week growth map, so we know what we're doing when. And we have accountability to keep us on track when we tend to drift and life happens and things like that. So your next step would be, okay, what might be 3 milestones? So say, for example, you wanted to, bring in those 5 clients. Let me make it an easier number. Let's say it's 6 clients over the next 3 months. Just make it easy math. Then maybe it's 2 clients in April, 2 clients in May, 2 clients in June. Or maybe it's 1 in April and then it's 3 and 3. There are different ways that you can break that down. But how could you take what you did, just like I gave my example, if I'm going from here to Miami, I'm not just going to be like, all right, I hope I get there. I'm going to very specifically kind of route through a couple different checkpoints along the way. Okay, so here's where we take this big thing that maybe right now feels a little bit scary. Like, I don't even know that I could do this, Lissa, 90 days from now, and this feels bigger than where I am right now. It should. It shouldn't just be like a little step over the line. But now we start breaking it down into, okay, what could be 3 milestones? They can be monthly, but they don't have to be. Okay, so when it says date there, when you're thinking about it, it might be that that first phase and that first milestone you want to get to only takes you a week or two. That's okay. Okay. So don't feel like it has to be exactly spaced out each and every month. And then we make it even smaller and we go, okay, so if I wanted to get to milestone number 1 by this date, let's say it's by the end of April, what would I be doing week 1, 2, 3, and 4 of April in order to get there? Okay. So again, all we're doing is breaking it down. Then guess what happens in week 1 of April? All you're focusing on is week 1. You don't have to worry about week 2, 3, or 4 in April. All you have to do is execute on week 1, right? And then when it's week 2, now I'm going to check in. Did I finish everything from week 1? If not, I'm going to adapt, right? I might need to make some changes to my plan. I always say do it in pencil and have a big pink eraser nearby, right? And have somebody else who can help you figure out how to maybe rework things if you need to, right? And now I'm focused on week 2 stuff. Again, I'm not worried about week 10 because that already has a place in the plan. Right now, I'm just focusing on where I am. And then we literally just go week by week. And you're going to be amazed at the end of 4 weeks if that's when you were going to get to your milestone, like, oh my goodness, I'm here, right? And now that's going to build momentum and that's going to build confidence and that's going to help me move on to the next thing. Okay? So we have to take this big thing that maybe feels really scary right now and break it up into those milestones and then break it up into even smaller milestones with timelines. Okay, here's what happens. If you don't put a timeline on it, then again, it just becomes that one day someday. And then we're not taking the action we need to now in order to actually move this thing forward. Now, this method is exactly how I was able to publish the Redeem Her Time Planner. If you don't have one, redeemhertime.com/planner. This is exactly how I did that, right? Where I was like, wow, I don't even know how to do this. I just broke it down into four 12-week growth maps. And each one had a specific milestone I was hitting by the end. And then I broke it down into what were my monthly milestones. And then I broke it down into what are my weekly milestones and targets, right? So that I knew what I needed to take action on. And that's exactly how we break something really big down and actually see results. Because we've got that consistent focus going in the right direction. And we've already got it mapped out step by step. Do you think that if you had a one thing focus, it would make a difference for you in Q2? Do you think if you had a step-by-step roadmap for how to get to not only the milestones, but then the smaller things in between, that would help you to actually make progress and or hit that goal before the end of the quarter? And do you think if you had weekly accountability, that you were checking in with your plan yourself and you were also being accountable to others and you were also getting coaching support around what you are needing to maybe tweak or change or update or think about that maybe you haven't, that you would be able to see this thing happen? That is how we make Q2 different than Q1. Okay, that is how we do that. And that's exactly what we do inside CEO Focus. So I just want to tell you guys real quick about that. And then if you have a few minutes, we're going to pop on for this last thing, the distraction part, because I think this is really, really important. Okay, but I want to take you back to that slide, because that way you're not always just seeing me. Okay, this is what we do inside CEO Focus. We go, okay, what is the one thing that I'm going to be focusing on? How am I going to break it down into those milestones and then those weekly targets? And how am I going to lean into weekly accountability so that way I am making progress? And it's okay. Sometimes we show up to one of those weekly accountability calls and we're like, last week happened. Okay, that's exactly why you need something like that, right? Because it brings you back when life happens. Right? And so that's what I want you to be able to say, okay, not just this is how I would like Q2 to be different, but let's actually walk it out together. And my goal for those of you guys who decide to join us, number one, you're going to lock in the $82 a month instead of the $97. So that's just an extra gift to you. You're going to get my Ideal Week mini course. And if you're already a CEO Focus client, I will also be gifting you the Ideal Week mini course as well for registering for this workshop. So I will make sure that I send that to you. But also, we've got ways that we build community and connection and collaborations so that you can really see progress in the things that you're doing and be around other like-minded women who are also growing something. I don't know about you guys, but business can feel lonely sometimes, right? Because a lot of times everyone else around you is doing something else, right? A lot of them are punching a time clock for an employer. And that's very different than, hey, I'm the business owner and I actually have to make some strategic decisions. And if I can choose not to do something, right? But then I am responsible for the outcome of that. And so I think we need to have other people that are around us in that. So let me go ahead and drop that link in here again for those of you who need that. And again, if you join us while we're still on live today, then you're going to lock in that lower rate for as long as you stick around. It's just my little gift to you for being here. Okay, let's talk first about what can happen. What can happen when you got a great plan and you get off a call like this, right? And that is distractions. How many of us are easily distracted, right? We've got squirrels in our brain. We got squirrels running around. I mean, I've been watching people outside my window and, things like that because just things have caught my eye even as we've been on here today. Okay, so here's the thing about distractions. The way to minimize their impact is to recognize them ahead of time. Okay, so I want to quick do that with you before we leave because you can have an amazing plan. You and I could work together. We could use the growth mapping method. I've got a whole training that I do when you come inside CEO Focus where we are going to map it all out and you're going to be walking into Q2 with on one sheet of paper exactly what you're going to be working on each week to know that you're going to hit your goal. But life is going to happen in one of two ways. Either external distractions or internal distractions, right? Or external squirrels or internal squirrels, however you want to call them, okay? So let me give you some examples because I'm going to have you identify what you think your top three are. And they don't have to be like, obviously with three, they're not going to be even between external and internal, but I want you to think about both categories, okay? External distractions. Number one, right there, this thing right here, right? Notifications, ring dings pings, right? Your computer might be boom, 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 all these tabs open and stuff like that. Okay, that could be an external distraction for you, stealing your focus. How about interruptions? Family, team, clients, whatever, right? Sometimes it's other people that aren't really paying attention to what's going on, what we're doing, and they're coming on in whenever they feel like it, right? Or calling us up or whatever that is. Maybe your distraction is that you're disorganized. Maybe you have files or inboxes or systems that are kind of a mess, right? And so when you sit down to do that thing, it's going to take you a whole lot of time because you're trying to find something. Or maybe it's all the shiny objects. How many of you are subscribed to too many things and you get too many offers and opportunities in your inbox and you're trying to get to inbox 0? Good luck with that, first of all. But, and then you're like looking at all these different things you could be doing. Right? How many of us sit down to work on something and 10 minutes later we're reorganizing folders that we didn't need to touch? Anybody ever do that, right? Or you walk into another room and all of a sudden you're doing something that you're like, why am I even doing this? This is not what was important. So what's going on around you that may be a distraction? If any of those kind of popped up for you, jot them down in one of the top three. Or maybe you're thinking of something else. And what about the internal ones? This is what steals your focus inside of you. Guess what, ladies? I think sometimes the internal distractions are actually louder than the external, but we just don't always recognize them. It's like overthinking everything. Anyone? Or limiting beliefs like, I'm not ready. I don't have enough experience. Why would somebody want to work with me? I don't know. I don't know enough. I'm not ready. Whatever those things are. Maybe it's discouragement. Maybe you have had slow results or you have had setbacks or you've had a season. I know somebody was saying earlier she had a season of some health issues, so she couldn't be working on stuff. That can become an internal distraction. Anyone here a perfectionist? Right? Sometimes that stalls us from moving forward. Right? Like you need to hit your growth project. You've got this goal, but you start second guessing and suddenly it's 3 hours later and you didn't get anything done. Okay? So right now I want you to go, okay, these are the top 3 things or maybe just 3 things that are oftentimes a distraction for me. It could be an external one. If it's an external one, put an E next to it. If it's an internal one, put an I next to it. Because even the best of us, right? If we have distractions, if we let distractions, I guess I should say, fear, discouragement, things like that, take over, then we're not going to be growing. So what are your top 3 squirrels? What is it that's stealing your focus, your time, and your results? Is it social media scrolling? Is it constantly being in your inbox? Is it unexpected tasks, things that keep popping up from other people? Is it doubt? Is it worry? Is it what will other people think? Is it feeling overwhelmed? So I want to encourage you, start noticing them. Maybe you have 1, 2, or 3 that come to mind right now. I want you to start noticing over the next couple of days what squirrels tend to steal your focus, your time, and your results. Okay, then step 2 is to choose to eliminate 1 completely this week, right? We may not be able to do something about all of them, but what is 1 that I can eliminate? Pick the one that has the highest impact on your results that you're like, hey, if this thing wasn't happening, and then I want you to think about what would I need to do? If it's a notification thing, that's easy. You just go on this device and you turn it off, right? If it's something with other people around you, you may need to have a conversation to say, hey, between this time and this time, this is when I'm going to be in my office. And what I would do oftentimes is I'd have my door closed, and that was a sign that I was doing something that needed specific focus. So I was communicating to people around me. So think about, how could I eliminate that distraction? And actually I had a conversation with some gals yesterday. What may be a distraction when you're working on your business may not be a distraction in another part of your day. So maybe it has something to do with when in your day you're giving this thing time or attention versus that this thing ever should get your time and attention. Does that make sense? And then I would encourage you with those other two that you put in that list. How can I minimize this? How can I maybe set some boundaries around it? How could I maybe put some schedule this thing somewhere else if I know this thing is going to come up in a different part of my day, so that way it's still getting my time when it needs to. Because if we don't, guess what? Every single distraction will derail us or delay us from actually taking action towards what it is that we're focusing on. Right? But every distraction that we remove, or at least minimize, is going to multiply the impact of our time, right? As that we're wanting to focus on our Q2 growth project. This is stewardship in action, right? We're not just working hard, we're working smarter, which is why we have to do that. Okay. All right. And the last question on here is, how will removing these distractions multiply the impact of my one Q2 growth project? Because again, we have to know the why, so that when that thing pops up, number one, we recognize it, but we also know, and we know what we're going to do about it, but we know why we're wanting to make sure that we're minimizing or eliminating this distraction. That's going to be really, really key. And a lot of that has to do with protecting what the focus is, because that's really important. Right? Okay. Well, we went a little bit over time today, so thanks for your patience here. I know there's a lot more, obviously, that we could do, but I wanted you to walk away going, okay, this is the gap that I have looking back at Q1. This is the area that I want to grow in as I step into Q2. Here's what I think, right, that growth project might be. Maybe you don't have it for sure dialed in, but maybe you've got some kind of an idea. Now, hopefully you're starting to think about, how could I break this down into 3 milestones over the next quarter, so that I don't do the take off strong in April, just like the January time frame, and then everything falls off in May and June. And then starting to think about okay, and what are the things I'm going to need to have my distractions minimized? And one of those things is going to be that weekly accountability, and somebody else who can really speak into what it is that you are doing, right? And that's what we're doing inside CEO Focus. So you should be able to still see that link because it's down near the bottom, right? And I will keep that link valid for any of you guys who are on live. I will keep that link working for a little bit more. So that way, if you need to take some time to pop in there and look around and kind of say, okay, what is this all about? If you have questions, of course, I'm happy to hang on here and answer questions for you about that. The last page I gave in here is a little gift for you, and that is a one-page, sorry, my pages got out of order. This is your execution plan. So I was like, okay, well, I want you to kind of be able to come up with, this is my execution plan, right, from what we've worked on today or we get started on today, right? That way you have a one-pager that you can put with your planner. You can put, right next to your computer or wherever it is that you're working, because this is what's going to help you remember, this is my growth project that I'm working on. These are the milestones that I'm wanting to break it down into. Here are the distractions, right? Here's where I'm actually going to make time to check in with myself and with my plan and with my progress and track my results. And I guarantee when you do this, especially when you use the system and support around the growth mapping method that we do inside CEO Focus, things will look different 90 days from now. They can't not when you are investing time consistently in a focused way towards what it is that you want to do. And so I'm praying for you. I'm cheering for you. I love, my mission and passion is to help you see growth in your business, to help you get off the hamster wheel of either overthinking things or waiting till the timing is right, or everything is just perfect, and actually start implementing with consistency so that you are actually making the impact that you're called to make. And so I would be honored to be part of that, if that would be something that would be beneficial to you as well. Like I said, I'm happy to hang on for a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions. I would love to hear an aha today. What was something that you're walking away with that was okay, I needed to hear that today? Maybe it was just a little nugget. Maybe it was a part of something that we actually did. Maybe it was just kind of something the Lord dropped in your spirit that didn't come out of my mouth, but you heard him say. Is there anything before we go that you want to share that was an aha for you, or a commitment? What's the commitment you're going to make coming out of here? I'd love to hear. You can drop it in the chat if you prefer to do that for those of you on live. If you are a replay girl, I'm so glad that you're here. I want you to shoot me an email, Lissa@redeemhertime.com. that will come directly to me. I want to hear, right? What was your aha today? What is your commitment today? Okay, because we're not wanting to come out of here just feeling rah-rah inspired, but going, okay, this is going to be my focus. I'm starting to think about what a plan might look like, and I know I now have access to a way that can help me not only create the plan, but also execute the plan. The need to deal with distractions. Yes, especially if you've had a plan in the past. So think about this, like, have you had a goal and a plan to reach it in the past? If so, then it may be that's the distraction piece you need to look at. So I love that. Yes. I always use the analogy of like a fun house. That first time you go through like a fun, I'm talking like not a scary haunted house, but like something pops up, right? The first time it pops up, you're like jump and you're like, ah, right? And then the next time you go through, you're like, jump, it pops up and you still kind of like, like you kind of react in your body, but you knew it was coming. And then the next time it pops up, you're like, like, it's like I didn't even, it didn't even faze me. That's how it can be with distractions, right? Like we are recognizing, hey, this is a time of day, or this is, typically when I go into my inbox, this is what happens. Or, if I put this off to later in the day, then all these other things start intersecting and things like that. So good. A reminder of how I spend my time. Yes. And I love that, Melisha, because here is where time is can either be our biggest obstacle or our greatest opportunity. So we can say all day long, I want to do this thing, but if we are not actually investing time in it, and remember, there's a difference between spending time and investing time. Investing time has a return, a ROTI, then we're not going to actually get anywhere. We're just going to waste a lot of time. So good. Good. Any other questions? Anything else before we go today? You have the link, redeemhertime.com/focus. You need to use code Q2RESET if you want to lock in that special pricing. And like I said, once you lock that pricing in, then you're golden there for as long as you stick around. And for those of you who are on here live, and if you are one of my CEOs and you're watching this replay, I want you to send me an email and say, Lisa, I'm watching the replay, so I can make sure to get the Ideal Week mini course to you, because this is that next step. You can have a plan, but if you don't actually know where you're making time for it in your week on a consistent basis, it's not going to really go anywhere. So that's going to help you guys out with that next little step in there as well. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then thank you guys. Thanks for hanging on with me. Those of you who are still on here, I will get those replays up and out for those of you who are on live that want to listen again, those of you who are just joining us this way. And I would, love for you to come check out CEO Focus. And the reason I made it this special thing for you guys today was because I want to make this Q2 different and help you help you do that. So I'm excited about what God's going to do and how we're going to walk this out together. So thanks for being here, you guys. I will see you soon.